to see live faces without masks. Some of you have masks, but that's okay. Feel safe. I'm Colette Mello. I am a curator and the special events manager here at Miami Beach Urban Studios, as well as part of Anna Winwood. And today we have an art talk with Aramis O'Reilly. I want to thank the City of Miami Beach Office of Tourism and Culture for always supporting these talks for us. Aramis' artistic practice includes painting, drawing, collage, and public art. His work is widely collected and exhibited. His most recent exhibitions were at Game Biennial, Project Row of Houses, and Prism Art Fair. And of course here at Miami Beach Urban Studios in our gallery. His practice includes working on public art projects which can be seen throughout Florida, including Miami International Airport, Florida International University. Aramis is a visual arts professor at the New World School of Arts and an MFA graduate from Florida International University. We want to thank Aramis for this wonderful exhibition and also for giving this art talk this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Colette, and for your staff also. Always so easy to work with, so very helpful. And I always look forward to being here. I felt very strongly peaceful way during the summer, knowing that the show was up and that it was in a good place. And you made that happen, so I appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
Also, for all of you, thank you for getting dressed, driving, parking your cars, making the effort to come here. I really appreciate that. You didn't have to do that. I'll remember the experience that I'm having with you right now. And this experience that I'm having with you is not about me. It's really about the thing that we all do or we appreciate. Somehow we're involved in it. What we're involved in mostly is just making sense of living and being interested in life. Finding a way of engaging in life and being interested. And for me, that way, for me, that way was, to me, that way was through the arts. For many, the same. Let me know if you can't hear me or if I mumble too much. I'm used to talking a lot when I'm in class, so it's a very familiar thing for me, but sometimes I don't know how I'm connecting with people. But the way that I engaged in life somehow early in my life was there was a moment of this beautiful trauma, I will say. I was very young, maybe 5, 6 years old, and I was going through the World Book Encyclopedia. I'm an immigrant. I came when I was 2 years old, and I'm the son of immigrants, family of immigrants, and the attitude that my family had was in this new world, they wanted their children to succeed through education. So they bought us every book that they could afford. One of them was the World Book Encyclopedia set from A to Z, and I would look through it as a kid, look through it, mostly pictures, and then I'd read something. Space fascinated me, so the S book was really used. I kind of cracked it open a lot. And then the P section was really interesting to me because I found P for painting. And there was a section in there that I just loved, that section. And I would go into that and crack that open and just look at the painting and say, wow, who does these things? The one that got to me the most, and I remember Picasso was very important to me, and so that was this sort of early trauma. And I could see that, I could admit it to myself, yeah, the way he broke space up was really important to me and also makes sense. I think I can tie that together with some of the things that are still happening here. The other person, I think more than Picasso, because Picasso was more structural and visual. I didn't get much feeling from him. But the one I got most of a sense of feeling, like thinking like, who does this? What kind of person makes these things? I want to be that person. Or later I thought, I can be that person. I think I am one of those people. I got to that place, I believed something. Well, that artist was Edward Hopper. I think he's still my favorite painter. And painting from here could have been a sculptor, right? It could have been that S section because space was near the sculpture anyway. It could have been that, or it could have been a printmaker. But I think painting was the thing that really caught me, and I kind of pursued or reacted to that beautiful trauma. Stayed with me, and I was painting as a child. My parents also, being really supportive for me, paint set, do my thing, and I just kind of developed a love for it. So I am here to talk to you about that. And I'm sharing that because these are the experiences somehow along the way that some of you who are artists, along the way, I think you caught something too with your own story. If I go through it, I kind of jump to where I am today and have the ability to look backwards to what happened to me in my trail of work and experiences, the experiences that I had in making work. I like to think of making work not through the lens of art. I like to think of making work through the lens of other things. Like I make work, being curious still and being engaged in life. I like to think of work as something that goes through the ideas of philosophy or the ideas of science or the ideas of agriculture, societies, politics, things like that. And I don't think it shows in my work, my positions on those things, but I go through those things to try to understand life through painting. Recently, I went through physics. I think it's been going that way in a way of understanding life. So that's why I'm starting with the 3 laws of thermodynamics. I'm just going to pop one up and pop the second one up. That's the most important one. The third one I'm not popping up because I don't want to be too sciencey, because I'm not very sciencey. I don't know much about science, just what I read, And but I'll just say what it is, and then I'll try to make a connection of how that works its way into my work and the way that I think about life and my life experiences, being displaced from one culture to the next, one country to the next, and things that happen to my family. So I've always heard that everything you make is a self-portrait. Absolute terms, I think, are kind of have to test them first. But I'm sure there's a lot of self-portraiture in everything that I'm doing right now. So I'm connecting this work also to my own life experiences. Again, it's sharing because it's what you do the same thing. It's happening to you. So, first law is energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred from one form to another. I love the universe idea. I wish I had been an astronaut or an astrophysicist. With that or a musician. Those would be the 2 other things that I would love to do. So that to me is
bizarre and weird.
That to me is an interesting student. Might behave that way. That to me is an interesting. Come in here. Amy Jefferson. Oh my God. Sorry guys. This is an informal talk. Thank you for coming. So, I think that really fascinates me that there is this one, as we know, enclosed system. And I think it explains a lot of also the way that I deal with the spiritual aspect of life for me. So there's an enclosed system, and in that enclosed system is everything. There's no new thing, and all of everything is not going to go away. So it makes me think a lot, because I can't wrap my mind around it. As a child, I tried to think about, like, well, if this is the universe, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to fool these physicists, right? If this is the universe, and it's somewhere, so where is it? There must be somewhere else that it is. And I always play these mind games and stuff. Of course, they're solving all these problems already. So that's really fascinating to me. that there is a system, and inside the system, there's a function in the system, and it seems like it's not only perhaps enclosed in that system, but also it's not changeable in some way, but it's very changeable in another way. So here's the second one. As energy is transferred or transformed, so it's talking about energy, if it's transferred or made into something, more and more of it's wasted. So as you make energy, you're wasting it. Energy is heat. Heat does not spontaneously pass from colder bodies or warmer. Warm things get colder. Yeah. The warmer thing gets colder to its environment until it becomes absolute or stable within its environment. It's called entropy. It's also entropy is in the thermal way, but it's also entropy mostly it's kind of like a disorder, chaos. So heat does not spontaneously pass from a colder body to a warmer body, which means hot things always get cool unless you do something to stop it. The entropy of an isolated system always increases. So entropy, disorder, is always increasing. I'm in entropy right now, which is that my system is trying to maintain, there's another word that we're going to look at, it's called negentropy. It's a very rare thing that happens in the universe, where something, some smaller system is actually able to convert and create order, and it tries to maintain order in all of this disorder, but it's only temporary. As it's doing it, it's dissipating into the environment, and it's going to sort of like end out. It's going to end out, it's going to slow down. So I'm in entropy, right? I'm going into disorder, I'm getting older disorder until I finally cool down, into my environment. And I pass into the environment. So will the universe, they say. There's a lot of stuff here. I don't want to read or do too much there, but I think some of it's worth it. I'm going to just be quiet for a second. You go ahead and do your thing. I love this. This is nature's tax. If you're going to have energy, nature's going to tax you on it. You got to pay back. I'm a slow reader, so I try to read very slowly, so that I thought, okay, that's it. If I finish reading, I think you're all pretty close to it, because I will stop. I love this part, the tax part. I also like very much, because things can not get any worse, nothing happens at all at the end. That's it. That's the end. That's the big chill, right? And everything comes to that. Absolutely. It is so disordered, you can't make any order out of it, nothing can get worse, it can't do anything anymore, and then that's the end. Wow. So that answers, or talks about, if I can go through physics, that talks about maybe some questions about that I have about how I was maybe trained to look at the world through a spiritual lens. Because I still have questions about that. I'm hoping there's a God thing. I'm hoping for these things. On the other side, I have doubts about that. Like there's one brain, total yes wanted, other side, total no, doesn't happen, right? And I'm caught in that. And I think it's okay. Yeah, because getting older and being honest. I have to be honest with myself now because it's going to be the end sometime. So I got to kind of get that together. So I also like this other part. So this was back at FIU when I was going through my BFA. At the time, I didn't know what I was doing. Like I don't know what I'm doing now. Yeah. Same. That hasn't changed. But I look back and I can say, boy, you really didn't know what you were doing. Maybe 10 years from now, I can look back at this day and I can say, yeah, you really didn't know what you were doing. So I'm hoping that happens. So I didn't have, then making that, it was a commission. It was someone who actually trained and raised horses and commissioned me to do the painting. It's 8 by 50 feet, so it's almost the size of a horse, like size. What I loved to do was, I needed any excuse to just paint. I noticed back then. I just wanted to paint things. I didn't really have a reason for doing it necessarily. You know, I just wanted to paint things and make things look the way I wanted them to look. Sometimes I have an idea, and I believe in the idea very much, and that was okay. But in retrospect, I realized it wasn't really a lot of, theoretical excavation going on. So I was thinking about maybe 25 at the time when I painted this one. What I liked about it was the qualities of light. I liked that I could actually draw and paint it to that level. For me, people can paint much better than that. But for me, I feel like every time I tried to push my abilities, and there was no reference. I was doing this just from my head. I love the fact that the light, I can play with light that way, and I can kind of break space up with these light rays. And I think this is like the Causal thing coming out, this would be running the painting running down. And then I can make this section here yellow, and that's blue sky, and it's still blue sky. I'm breaking up space, and I can actually fracture it up. There's a secondary structure happening. That's kind of like the bones in the painting, and a deeper layer that have nothing to do with what you're seeing. And I like making that. I like creating the structure first, and painting it in different lights, and then the play between values and lights and colors. And there was kind of a relationship that was happening where the systems, there was a system being formed. Yeah, that had nothing to do with a horse. Yeah, because I was not maybe intellectually mature enough to consider that part of it. Yeah. So next one. And I got a fellowship to go, a Simplest fellowship at the time, right after I graduated. Right after I graduated, I got a fellowship, and I used the money to go. My wife and I just got married. My wife and I went to Brazil for a year. Gave me plenty of time to work. I saw this, I lived in an apartment looking down at the ocean because the dollar went very far. And I looked down at the ocean. I remember there was a fisherman down there, and I could only see his light, but I couldn't see him. There was a storm coming, so the boat was kind of rocking a lot. And I was just thinking, wow, what's it like? The poor man's trying to get back on land, and there's a lot of poverty there. He's got to bring those fish back. So I was just imagining light and said, I'm going to paint that thing, And then I also, back to Picasso, I thought of, there's a painting that I love very much, which is fishing in Antebes. I just love the structure of it, I love the way it is. It's one of those things that sings a song to me. Like, the ones that I love is almost like a musical to me. I have a reaction that way to it. So this was maybe a year after the course, but I'm breaking space up more. Yeah, just an excuse. It's just an excuse. I have a reason to paint it, but I'm now kind of push the idea of having different sections appearing at the same time in space that belong to either some other world or some other time in that same world. So if it's water, it's the world of water that I'm experiencing now. So if it's this water and this water is changing, and if it's this water, it's the same water, but from different locations that I'm imagining. Or I have an opportunity to use that space and then put something else in there. So I replace what I might be there with something else. I displace it and replace it. So I'm doing displacing and replacing and building structures and breaking up space. And this connects back to my childhood. coming to America, the reason for coming here, I'm Cuban, so it was the revolution, obviously. We were, my mother was against it. I had lost my father in the revolution. I didn't know that because I'm 2 years old. But I think I was feeling the pain that she was going through. We had lots of crying, lots of fear. We had to escape very quickly, all of that stuff. And we came over here, and I could hear conversations growing up, and there was a lot of pain and fear, and definitely longing to go back. So what happened to me was that I think that there was another world that was being created. It was the world of the other place, where I'm from. I'm actually an alien here. I don't belong here, but I'm fitting in, I'm growing up here, right? So there's all of us, many of us have that experience as immigrants. So I have two worlds happening. They don't meet, they can't meet, yeah? They've never met, I've never been back. Both worlds still exist in very different ways. But what happened was, I think I was growing up, trauma-wise, I was growing up with, like, there is no real place. Yeah, I was starting to think, there's no real place. And other places can be interchangeable. I can dream of a place, it's just as good at being in a place. So I had a lot of mental activity about it, and the sense of home was very fluid for me. So I think that played a lot in wanting to say that that's available, that different spaces can exist at the same time. And this kind of, if I jump back to now, there's this kind of entropy going on, yeah, or negentropy, yeah, that things are coming together to make something and then things are falling apart into more chaotic systems. So that's why I'm pursuing that more. So keep going. So there's this idea of structure and function I'm starting to think versus randomness and chaos. So there's a structure. And function structure refers to something's form, makeup, or arrangement. I was very interested in that early as a painter. Functions refers to something's job, its role, task, or responsibility. Right. So the structure of one thing, yeah, looks like that. This looks like that. The computer looks the way it does because it needs to be that way for it to function the way it does, for human eyes to look at them, for us to think. A coffee pot looks the way it does because its function dictates that it should have that shape and no other shape. We can play with it a little bit. There's a certain percentage that we can change, but there's 90% of it we can't change or else it'll lose its function. You see? So there's a kind of like also percentages over the relationship between function and structure. Sometimes if you give up too much structure, you lose function. And if it's all about function, the structure isn't really appropriate for the function to happen, so it doesn't happen. So in my paintings, I'm thinking about structure and function. And what is the function and what are the structures? Structures are easy because I can see them. I love playing with them. Function, not so easy because what are they making? What are they trying to do? So the relationship of structure and function is the structuring levels from, and now I'm getting into a science that I was really interested in. The relationship of structure and function is the structuring of the levels from molecules to organisms that ensure successful functioning in all living organisms and systems. So the functioning goes up in order. It's called emergence theory. Some system unites with another system, and they make something else, and they make something else, and it kind of keeps growing and growing into more functionable systems. One of the overarching theories of biology is that structure determines function. How something is arranged allows it to perform a specific job. We see this at all levels in the hierarchy of biological organization, from atoms up to the biosphere. I'm thinking of my paintings and my drawings like that. They're organisms, yeah, that are sort of finding structures that make functions, which I'm not quite sure what they are. I'm sort of surprised at their function. At the end of it, it's like, well, this is what you're doing. This is what's working here. Yeah. But I'm going through the process of making those higher levels of structures unite. And I'll try to go through that as we move along. This is a painting, I think I've destroyed this painting, it's gone. This came like also the structures like from the horse and then the fisherman. It's still very figurative. I don't know how to I'm not breaking any rules necessarily. I love working with a figure. It's me and my wife, and I'm just painting lots of dreamy places because we've been married for a few years now. I really love my wife. To me, it's it's a huge gift. So I think a lot about myself through her, and living in that space with her, especially then when we've been going to 35 years now. So especially then, we're sort of growing together, becoming one, and I'm thinking of like these magical, mystical moments together. So I'm painting a lot of those things, and starting in larger space, make things disappear a little bit, but I'm still structure-wise obeying most of the rules that I think should be obeyed as a painter. And I mean, there are lots of these things of us together, many, many works of us together in different situations, and exploring that kind of telling stories about us. And this one I made a bit later on when I was at my MFA there. And I'm now creating a system that challenges me just a little bit more, breaking spaces up a little bit more, and trying to create, as a painter, trying to create problems and I'm trying to solve. That's probably the part that really starts to click for me, is that I don't want to have, I want to lose more control by saying to myself, trying not to have too much forethought, trying to let process guide me more until I get to a place that becomes interesting to me. Not necessarily a beautiful place, but a place that's interesting to me. So then I get to this place. It started with that previous painting, not so different from the fisherman breaking up spaces and in and outs things. But later on, I started to get into deconstructing the world into smaller parts. That's part of what entropy does as well, is that as it dissipates, it's breaking up maybe molecules into smaller pieces. Yeah, so that's why the organization isn't working anymore. It's just breaking apart into pieces that can't integrate anymore, just new systems. Yeah. So deconstructing, I choose the landscape in this case. Deconstructing is a way of understanding how something was created. Deconstruction is breaking something down into smaller parts. Deconstruction looks at the smaller parts that we use to create an object. The smaller parts are usually ideas. And I like that. I wanted to get more abstract. I wanted to have the things that I make not be things that are knowable. They don't have names. So I'm moving towards that, trying to break things into smaller parts, letting them entropize, if that's a word, just letting them float around, and then see if they can find a way of coming together and create a new systems. So this is kind of like the next painting that comes out, the one with the canoe, and it's 7 by 8, and it's now still telling the story of my wife and myself. I'm still with that. We're on top of a carpet. Those are her feet, those are my feet. The carpet's one that we just come back from India. So we got a little carpet from there. That's the table. It identifies this is our place. It has a room. That's our room in the apartment we were living at the time. And just a bunch of stuff that I put there. Figures here. They're upside down. Those are Michelangelo's captives that he carved out, the slaves that he never really released from the stone. And just a bunch of ideas I'm doing, but I'm still like creating more entropy in my work. I'm trying to break it apart more to indistinguishable things, and just creating a dream world, a kind of a liminal space I'm trying to make. So that approaches more the sense of how I felt as a child, where I had my place in Union City, New Jersey. I had this other world that my parents were describing each time that I belonged in and longed for and was getting further away. So I was living always in a liminal space in my life. And I feel like I've carried that. I still feel like I'm living in a kind of a liminal space, like an in-between spaces. That's how I've felt that I think all my life. So I created these in-between spaces, trying to express those things, finding ways of doing that. It's a couple of close-ups. That's the vase that we have, that's the table that we have. And I think this is the last time a figure appears in my work. This is from a painting of John the Baptist walking on sort of a water going into baptism. That's the position. So I just took that, I lifted that and put it in the painting of a man just doing this through the space. And all of space is kind of like, he is part of everything, and all things are part of him. This one with little flowers and things like that. The garden now starts to replace. I displace other things and I start to replace the world with the garden world. Because to me, the garden world, the world of nature, never disappoints, as Frank Lloyd Wright said. They asked him, they had a question about nature. He said, nature never disappoints. So I gravitated towards the natural processes, nature, the sky, plants, and like, it's all happening right now, and all systems are happening. It's beautiful, even the death that's in it. It's all beautiful, and we're part of that. So I'm moving towards nature as my subject. Infuse these other thoughts into me. That was the last figure, because in here, there's a one here. There was another one on this side somewhere. I can't remember where it is. There's one here somewhere, embedded inside, and they're gone after this. And now nature's taking over. Yeah. So now the ideas, my subject is displacing the figure and figurative work and painting the natural forms and lights, how they, have light hits the surface. They're going away, and now I'm allowing myself to make spaces that I think that I would be in myself. If I were walking through the landscape, I would be in this place, and I would transform those spaces into this. As I'm in them, I would want them to be like this and feel like that. Kind of the way it feels when I'm, with my wife, feeling so much like myself. When I'm with her, everything is sort of like, seems right. So now I'm deconstructing, now I'm reconstructing. A thing that has been rebuilt after being damaged or destroyed. So I'm pulling it apart into indistinguishable parts, and then I'm reconstructing them into some distinguishable parts that start to lean towards, I think that's landscape, I think that's a tree, I think that. Sometimes it's very clear, yes, that can be a tree, but actually you'll see that at some point I try to move way away from the landscape and still do landscape. So now I start. A lot of it happens in drawing. Drawing for me seems to help me change painting. I experiment more in drawing. I take more chances in drawing than I do in painting. So it helps me push forward. So now I'm taking elements that I'm either creating, inventing, or things that I might see, and I'm saying, this is how the energy works. This is how things come together. Little parts, little dendrites, not dendrites, detritus. Little pieces of detritus, that's how they work. They come together, and they find out of all this chaos, they're starting to come together, they have a purpose, they're moving, creating a system. Eventually there'll be something, not sure what it is, boom, leave it right there. So I'm doing that with these drawings. And then it moves into painting. It helps me with the painting. So it's the same thing, some sort of natural forms, and then they're pulled apart, looking for a way to find their mate, find the connection, and then I'm gonna go over there, guys. You guys go over on this side because you belong with them, and I'm gonna go over on this side with these guys, these 50 people over here, and then we're gonna make something over there, and we'll all make something beautiful together. That's how I'm thinking about it. Oh, also, this here is the first time for me that it happens. I put some stuff in there. I think I have another slide that shows the process. I put some stuff in there and I keep layering and covering it. I just wanted to build some sort of like cage around it and make it disappear. So I made this folding paper kind of thing. I folded some paper and I just like to see how it was, put some light on it, and then I just started to use it as a reference, and I just like made a little nest around it. And I called them ribbons. And I didn't know why, but I just started to make lots of ribbons. If someone asked me about it, I said, I don't know why I made ribbons, but I just want to make ribbons. So I made a lot of ribbons, paintings with ribbons. So this is an earlier stage. I was just trying to build things, ideas. A lot of these things I'm saying here is like the tape that I put down, and I painted some red or sprayed some red on it. And then that's embedded behind those ribbons. All that stuff is in there. So more ribbons. That's the painting over there. More ribbons. And I'm thinking, well, ribbons, all these ribbons, it's like better structure. It's as if like it's a microscope having gone into that other first drawing. Smaller area. Pop that down. There, that's inside the ribbons. Terrific. And then the ribbons are really well-formed new structures. Now they have a job. They'll make things. Yeah. So I had these ribbons, and they were kind of exploding, making new energy. That's the way I was thinking about it. After I made the painting. A lot of my ideas about the painting come afterwards. So that's what I did. And I'm thinking about it. Sometimes I'm thinking with it, but a lot of it is like a posthumous discovery for me, which I like. I want to make the painting that way so that it's something that I'm learning from, not something that I necessarily have manufactured, but something that I create, and it goes through cycles of me understanding it later and understanding it later. Like they're still dynamic to me. They still are contemporary for me. For somebody else, not for me, yes. So made the ribbons and all these new landscapes. And then I maybe started to put little places like, this is maybe like an object, like a tree with a shadow. Little hints of where this possibly could be in the big picture, the big scheme of things. Some more drawings, with more ribbons, more stuff coming together into more developed forms. And others still in the midst of an immature state that eventually will mature. Yeah, so there are different levels of maturity. Kind of like when we look back at the universe, we look back as far as we can. The further back we look, it's actually later in time. So we've been able to look back recently about 14 billion years, I think. So we're actually starting to see the earliest parts of the time. Because that's when the light that's coming to us is being captured by that telescope now, but that's light from like 14 billion years ago. So I'm kind of looking at structures in development of time, or making structures in the development of time. Structures that are more developed, here they are, really like coalesced, and structures that are still in the process early on, maybe 20,000 years late, still to go before they mature into something. And some more of those drawings and paintings. I love mixing, I really enjoy mixing drawing and painting on paper at this time. So lots more. The good thing for me also is At some point, this is neither here nor there for you, but at some point, I was also having a shift of what it was like to have a career in the arts. And the shift for me was like if nobody's really interested in what you're doing, would you still do it? And the answer has to be yes for me. For me, it has to be yes for me to be authentic, right? So I was actually trying to put that to the test. I was never one to go and seek things. Thank you very much for inviting me to have the show. Yeah. But I wasn't one generally to go out to seek things. So it would just be like whatever was offered for me. I was very happy to do that, if it was a good thing to do. I'm going to say teaching also had a lot to do with this, because there's a beautiful thing that I was talking to Tori about, that there's a beautiful thing that has happened to me in my life with teaching, which was I've been able to participate in something that's much greater than me. To do something together. And I've learned so much from it. And it has replaced things that I don't need to do in my art. I don't need attention. I don't need any attention, Sometimes your ego craves it, but you gotta push it back. For me, I have to push it back. So I had to put that to the test. So I just made work with not thinking anyone would see it. I just had to. So for years, just making work so that no one's going to see it. And sometimes I would show it as if nothing. I'm not going to be like a big star or anything like that. I just show it and I take it back home. And it was good for me because I felt that it tested my who I was, my practice, my resolve. Like, who am I really? Why am I making this? Well, I'm making it so that I can have these experiences and be enriched by it, and hopefully pass that enrichment along through osmosis to anyone else who's interested in that stuff. Yeah. So that's just on the side. So I made these ribbons again without there wasn't something compelling me because I'm getting a reward for it. There was no reward for making the ribbons. It's just I was compelled to make them. I started to figure out why I was making them. So I've talked about displacement replacement, but this is the part in my path where I can show some work about that. So when you replace something, you pull it completely out of the system and put in something that ideally can do everything that original could and hopefully do and a bit more. If something is displaced, however, it is not removed from the system. So if you're displacing something, let's say I'm displacing my hand in space. It's still the hand, but it's here. If I'm replacing it, the hand is gone, and now it's a cauliflower. Right? I've replaced it. Now, the cauliflower in the hand, it could work if I put the cauliflower on this. Right? Because there's enough information to even know, boom, that must be a hand that's a cauliflower. I'm gonna take it for a hand. It's metaphorical, right? So I'm also working with substituting things like I did early on with fishermen, where I substituted spaces with not just water, but now I'm getting these little patterns instead. And that goes back to my childhood. Like this displacement, replacement, substituting what home is for something else, and then the dream world is now this world, and I can still maintain it. I have a kind of a long-standing, I'm gonna go to my hometown in Havana before I die. That's the thing I'm saying. There's another part of me that says, don't do that. Because you'll break everything. You see, I think I have to leave it as though it's that place, not this place that I'm going to go visit, which is never that place. So I'm caught between a big decision in my life. So that's a big replacement, displacement thing that I'm personally experiencing as a decision. But replacement, displacement is always now in my work because I think because of that, those experiences I had when I was younger. So now I get very geometric, I'm replacing things that look organic with the entropy, right? The chaos breaking down into smaller parts, replacing them with objects that behave in the way, that function in the way that the DNA does, let's say, or organic things do when they're finding themselves to create negentropic systems, new systems of life. And I'm replacing them with just geometry. So that's the decision I made, and because I just want to do it. I think that's a really cool thing. I'm having a good time doing it. Back to when I was a painter early on, making systems, visual systems, machines, like visual machines, that I enjoyed doing so much. So this is my opportunity to make some visual machines that don't necessarily represent anything except for how they function. There's no representation here. There's no allegory, things like that, that I have to burden myself with, because maybe I just don't think that way now or in the past. So there's one. This is all part of it too. This is just 2 wood panels that I painted, right? And I like to get real busy. So it's like I maximize, and then I start to deconstruct a little bit until then I find enough energy. And this follows it. More geometry. And I'm getting into duct tape. So, and little ribbons and stuff like that, a lot of collaging. And this is from my palette, a chunk of paint. So I just cut my palette out, a chunk of paint, and I pasted it on. And I'm now replacing, objects and paint as object, and paint as a material that creates what we know paint to do. It creates illusions, it creates planes and spaces and things like that. So that's one of them. That's another one. And I make a bunch of these. And to me, it's still a landscape. I've just replaced it with things that aren't landscapey. They're not like foliage or flora. A little bit more of that, just doing different things. And these are the ones that are here. That kind of came at that time. Still landscapes for me. So negative entropy, that's the big one now for me. Negative entropy. I'm sorry that there's some stuff with the heat and the science and things like that. Again, I'm no expert, but this is what I knew and what I've researched so far. There's another thing, 2 other high-level layers of thinking for me. One before this has been tropism. And tropism is what plants go through, where they respond to stimulus, right? Negative stimulus, they move away from it. Positive stimulus, they move towards it. At the end, the plant looks like this because of all that. This happened because of the hurricane, then it went like this because of the sun, and it had a good spring. Eventually, the final form is a process, a long process of tropism, of responding to stimulus. And I see also my work as a process, a tropic process, that I'm creating events, and eventually they turn into these new systems that have an energy, and to me that energy is a new life. Yeah. And 2 keys. One is RNA. Many scientists agree that RNA, well, the thing about negative entropy is that It's an organism that interacts with its surroundings and expel entropy via heat to gain local order. Yeah, it's collecting from disorder. It's rare. It collects from disorder and makes order. Yeah. And it reduces the local entropy. It reduces the local entropy, the entropy in itself, the disorder in itself, it's actually reducing it. It's increasing it out here, reducing it, disorder here, creating more order here, creating examples, life. Yeah, very rare and it's temporary in the universe. It can't sustain it. There is no perpetual motion. Yeah. So global order still increases, but for that organism, the ability to locally reduce entropy is literally a matter of life and death. An obvious example is this principle in humans. Many scientists believe that RNA, or something similar to RNA, is the first molecule on Earth to self-replicate and begin the process of evolution. The first, like, negatropic, substance or system was RNA. Led to more advanced life forms, including human beings. There is one word, especially for you, Chris. I don't know if it's used. No. I will read this. Life is considered to be negatropic because it converts things which have less order, such as food, into things with more order, such as cells and the body's tissues and organs. So we can move on. This is RNA. And I said, yeah, these were my ribbons. Earlier on, I would say, isn't DNA like this? That's what I said. So I was like subconsciously, maybe from the sciences that I'd learned and stuff like that, I was subconsciously saying, I'm replacing these paper ribbons. That's the beginning of making form, like the lowest structure of life. Because I can do so many things with it. And so when I made that connection, I was very happy. Like a coincidence, but I'm no genius, right? So I didn't know this was happening. I just made that connection. Said, wow, RNA looks like, so it gave me the courage to continue because I felt like I was onto something that was nice for me. So I thought, so this is my ribbon. So we have life, and so I started a process of, since drawing is really helpful for me, it leads me into other things. I said, let's make. There was another reason for doing it too. But let's make drawings after drawings after drawings, and this was the number one. That's the first one. So far, I'm like on 250 something, 260 in there, and I'm just going to keep making them. And I name them events. Later on, there's a reading that there's a word that physicists use that when these things happen, they actually call them events. These negative properties. Right? So, and that was a coincidence. I named it before I read it later. I said, wow, that helps me too. So that's number one. That's number two. They're the size of this, and I do them in coffee shops. I do them at home in front of the TV while I'm eating. Any chance that I get, I do them. And I'm just going to keep doing them, see where they take me. It's number three, number four, and I'm just going to go through it. I'm going to show a few of them. Oh. What happens here is there's something called deterministic systems. Once I start to do this, which is deterministic systems is a system in which no randomness is involved in the development of the future states of the system. A deterministic model will thus always produce the same output from a given starting condition or initial state. That is, there's no randomness. The randomness is that there's no purpose yet. Yeah. Deterministic systems, they've developed a pattern where they produce something, and so the outcomes continue. Once they do them, they can do them again. They can do them again. They're determined in the system. Yeah. And so my drawings, I felt so that's going to happen. I know for sure. I'm going to make tropic, like I'm going to do something. I'm going to respond to it, I'm going to do something, I'm going to respond to it, and it's a deterministic system that it will eventually become something, and I bet you there's something in me that is going to do the same thing. I have the tendency, because I am who I am, I'm going to do the same thing, because that's aesthetics. So I'm going to try to change my aesthetics. Let's see what happens if I keep breaking that and make things move in a different direction so that the output from a starting condition or initial state isn't always the same. That's what I'm going to try to do. I'm testing myself. So I'm not going to read that part. So I start to do that. It's that one, and I get information from maybe the banners that are in a car salesman, when they have all these colorful banners. So I get that from there, or maybe I'll get a fence and I'll look at something over there and I try to replace it with other elements or use them directly. And I'm just going to try to start in a different way, try to find different impulses so they're not so deterministic, and see what I can produce that could offer differences. But then I see that I'm developing a language, right? It is deterministic because it's always me. So I'm always going to develop a language. I can expand on it and challenge it as much as I can, which I will try to do. That's what I said to myself. I am who I am. I'm going to have my language, but I'm going to try to expand the boundaries as much as I can before I can't do it anymore. I'm still in that process, and I look back at that and say, I could have done even more. I hope to do even more. That's the painting that's over there. This is something called Causal Determinism, and I'm going to be finishing real soon. Causal Determinism, sometimes synonymous with historical determinism or a sort of path dependence, is the idea that every event is necessitated by an antecedent event and conditions together with the laws of nature. However, it is a broad enough term to consider just that. What that means is that one event will cause another event to be, to cause another event to be, and it's essentially going to happen because of the event that happened before. It's going to determine what that event's character will be. And that's it yet, confirms it, that causal determinism is one event that I do is going to do the next event, and if I keep doing the events that I normally do, they're going to produce the same results. I can't get away from it. I'm caught up in a loop. Like, what is creativity for me? How do I change and make change? Because I'm seeking change. So, some more of that. That's the same one. Those are the partners. So then I look into, well, can I create more randomness? Or can I create more chaos? Will that help me make change? So I look, randomness is unpredictable because we lack information. So there's a system that might be happening, but we don't know enough about it, so it seems random. Right? We can look at ourselves sitting down, we think this is all random. But there was a system before this of how we entered in and the seat that we found, and it just makes sense that we landed this way. Right? Chaos is predictability that breaks down over time. That is, that chaos actually comes out of a system that was actually functioning. It made sense, and then it broke down. So the difference between randomness and chaos, they seem the same, but their function and how they come to be is very different. Chaos was in order, now in disorder, and randomness is we just don't have enough information to know if there's a system involved that's deterministic, that actually means something, that functions. It isn't just loose structure, but it's actually working towards something. Yeah. And now I like to pair them up. And I did that for the first time with this show. When I set up the show and I looked at them, I said, wait a second, they do come together. So I just started to make a couple of pairs. I'm going to start doing more of that thanks to you, Colin, for giving me the opportunity. One thing that I noticed, and I've told this to students that I've worked with, it's like a peculiar thing that happens, that I've noticed that when you're working off the edge, we have a tendency to go off the edge many times in the same place. Like I'll look at paintings I've made, and I look at paintings or objects that my students have made, and I can see like this space down, they keep going off the edge over here. And if I look at their edge, it's the same place, like within 3 inches. And I do the same thing. These drawings were made like months apart. this and this connect together. And I find lots of connections. There are coincidences, but it's deterministic. I tend to do that right there. And I do that in other places. That's just me, that's my language. And then I'm trying to explore, like, so I'm looking at my language here, right? This is nice. I get to see what I'm doing. So I'm pairing things together that don't belong so easily and things that belong easily, work easily together well. This painting, this drawing was for the big painting that's there. And I think I have 60 here, 50 something. There's some more here that aren't here. And again, I have like another couple hundred that got stashed away at home somewhere in a binder. I'm also working on the computer and different places. So a thought that I had early on in my life that I see, because I'm doing so much more work, I see, yeah, that's true. Is now I feel like I have been making another world, and these are moments, events in that world. If I were to walk into that world, the world is consistent. I'm just going to this location, that's where that was at. I'm going over there, and that's where that was at. This is that liminal space in between that I had lived as a child, that I created, and that I still feel like I live in, this other third place. And this I'm making now, that other third, I'm building the other third place, the other place. The more that I make them, the more of that third place I get to see. And it's always, for me, still movement that's negentropy, trying to create order in forms. Some forms, and other forms still loosely finding a way of joining in and finding their place. But I feel like all parts have a kind of intelligence, inner intelligence of knowing where they eventually will go and belong. They just haven't arrived. They're still floating in space. There's still some entropy that they're trying to, this system is trying to gather and create a new form and energy from. That's just something else. That's just a space. You know what I mean? I just think of the space and I make a space. That's this. And then last two slides, and this one, fatalism, which is the idea that everything is fated to happen. That's the concept. So that humans have no control over their future. Fate has arbitrary power and need not follow any causal or otherwise deterministic laws. I wonder about that. You know, it's like, is this, am I living out a life that I'm supposed to be living and all things were supposed to happen? You know, I think we all have questions like that. Or am I actually controlling something? Do I have control of this? And that's my paintings also. I have this sort of like a dual thought about my involvement in the painting, which is like, I should just keep making paintings that I know I'll be making, or that I don't know I'll be making, but I know they will be made by me. Or am I actually making any changes? Am I controlling this in any way to find and make new things? So it's a question that I leave myself with. And this painting I had, and maybe the last painting there, this painting I had, because I felt like I left it very early. I would normally take it a little further. But one of the problems that Jim Cooper told me, when the professor from FIU, my painting professor, he says, you know, we have a problem when we finish things, because when we finish things, we think we finish them because of the work and we make decisions about it. But there are all kinds of other reasons that get in the way. Like, well, you know, for me to finish something, I usually suffer more. I haven't suffered enough. Yeah, it's usually 20 more hours at least, you know? And I usually finish that much pain. Like, there's all these rules that we set up to tell us that we finished something. And it's just made up, we just make them up. And so, I've been getting into, like, leave it early, let it go. Let it go early. And just let it live at that state. And see what that feels like to me. So this was a painting that I let go early. I would have definitely gone into it further. But I want to learn about that, what it's like. Maybe then, it's not so fatalistic. It's almost like I'm telling fate, you didn't get me, because I didn't finish it. Like you thought I would. Yeah. Now let's see what we got. And I finished with this one, which is, I like all the other ones, but I like this one. I don't know why. It's like the most recent one, and I like this one. So I like it because it feels really good, and it also just bothers me. You know, it's doing both things. I can go back into it, and then I don't want to because it's done. But then I know, again, back to the thing, it's like I could probably do some more things to it. No, it's just, and I feel like it found its own place, and it doesn't need me anymore. And I like that very much. I like to think. I think things are successful when I disappear and have less weight in an event. I think that's more successful to me. As the more I disappear, I think that I disappear, the better it is. It goes. I'm going to end it with this. This also goes back to my teaching practice, which is the more I disappear, I think for the sake of learning, the more successful that event was. If I could be forgotten out of the equation, then I think I did my job. So, thank you for coming so much.
I'm sure we all have questions, but maybe we can get up, go to the work, and talk to you, and have a refreshment while you're here, please. So, and thank you so much, Aramis, for a wonderful exhibition and an amazing talk. Your creativity is something I'm going to be thinking about, and a lot. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.